everyone, welcome. Now we're live. Welcome on YouTube also. And my name is Brian, and I have with me Askia. Say hi, Askia. Hi. Perfect. Welcome to this first edition of Get Started with Data Engineering on Microsoft Fabric. Askia, would you like to present yourself? Just a few words.
Yes, so my name is Oscar. I am a data engineer, data platform MVP. Been doing data platform for many years. Now close to 20 now. Been doing Fabric since Fabric became Fabric. Before that, of course, Power BI and SQL, all kind of data warehouses and stuff like that. So I'm really happy to be with you today. I've also done lots of courses and training, so I'm hopefully we will have some fun today.
And you are also, if I'm not mistaken, you are also quite an expert on governance in data platforms.
That is something that I have tried to work on quite a bit in the last many years. So hopefully that was also because that's a part of what we're going to talk today. So that's a good thing.
Exactly. A few words about me. I'm Brian. I'm from Denmark. Data platform MVP, has worked in the data universe for 25 years. And I'm so thrilled to be here, and I'm so honored to be a part of this live session. And also a huge shout out to our moderators. We have live on the moderators today. We have Pragati and we have Jakub, who is live chatting with you on YouTube right now. So if you have any questions, they will happily answer all of them for you. Big shout out to them, because moderating is actually the hard part of this job. Askia and I are just chatting about slides. That's fine. And just a side note here, live chat is of course only when you see this live. If you see this on the recorded session, it's not so much live chat. I think that's more or less obvious. I hope so. I hope so. And if we have the time, I will ask the producers to push on questions to us, so we can perhaps answer a few of them here on camera while they are present in the chat. So let's get started. As I said, this is the first session. Today is Tuesday, and we are going to talk about getting started with data engineering on Microsoft Fabric, which is a part of the DP-700 exam, the certification that went GA a couple of weeks ago, the Fabric Data Engineer exam. This builds on top of DP-600, which is the Data Analytics Engineer. Tomorrow we will have ingest and manage data in Fabric with factory and notebooks. Quite interesting. Tuesday, February 11, I'll actually be back again talking about real-time intelligence in Microsoft Fabric alongside with Valerie. The day after, data warehousing, again, Microsoft Fabric environment, CI/CD, monitoring and security. Perhaps, Askia, you should have been there. Administration and governance, and then the last two are open, prepare for the exam days and Q&As. So a lot is going on within the next couple of weeks. So hang tight and have fun, and remember to ask all the questions. So next up, a small shout out for Vegas. Askia, are you going to Vegas?
I am going to Vegas. Yes, I'm going to be delivering a training day, full day training together with Lars Andersen and Just Blindbæk on administration and governance in the Fabric. On the Saturday, the March 31st. Are you going?
No, I'm not going this year. I was last year, and it is quite a blast. So if you have the time and the money to go there, I would highly recommend it. It is amazing. It's amazing. So you're doing a training day there, so that actually gives back to the governance expert around Fabric and data platforms. Perfect. And if you are fast enough, because prices go up in a few days, you can get a $150 discount if you use the MSCUST code, and then you'll get a $150 discount on the ticket right now. And there will also be a in Vegas, in Vienna, in Europe this fall. So we don't know yet who's going there, but amazing. There's also a 50% discount. We just keep on giving out discounts today. A 50% discount for taking the DP-700 exam. Go to aka.ms/gc/DP-700. Fill out the form, and you would be eligible for a 50% discount. But be fast, because this offer ends March 31, as we are kicking off FabCon in Vegas. Live and interactive. Yeah, as I said, a huge shout out to our moderators. We're live chatting with you on YouTube. Moderators are chatting with you right now. I hope you have a lot of questions. Just please keep it coming, and hopefully we can have 1 or 2 or perhaps 3 questions pushed through to this to the cameras, and then we can be good to go. So get started with Microsoft Fabric and data engineering. What we will cover today is actually also covered on this shortcut, aka.ms/DP-700 course. But now you'll get it. Quite on the video.
I get the long version.
So Asgeir, you're on.
All right, so we will now do the overview of the actual certification. So hopefully that's something that we can help you with, understanding a little bit what the certification is and how you best prepare for it. So what is it about? The Fabric Data Engineering certification is a certification that is aimed at the back end, if you're going to call it that, of Fabric. So if you think about the DP-600, which has been out for a while, that is more focused on the people doing analytics. So Power BI and semantic models and those kind of things, maybe Dataflow Gen 2. While the Fabric Data Engineer certification is more focused on the data engineer that is building data lakes and streaming solutions. So basically a data platform. It is for people that have been working with it, I think it's important to say that if you are, you are going to find it really hard to pass the exam if you only have theoretical experience. You probably need to have some kind of a hands-on experience in some field, at least a related field, for it to be viable to go for this. That's not to say you cannot try it, but it's probably going to be hard for you. It is built up in 3 different sections. So you have something about ingesting and transforming data, and then you have a section about securing and managing the solution, and then about monitoring and optimizing it. All of them are, quite heavy, and they are, the questions. I have taken the exam. The questions were tough, but nothing that if you have experience, if you have read your theory, and if you watch the series, I think you should definitely be able to pass it. It's just it's not very theoretical. It is actually quite practical, I think. So this is aimed at data engineers that are supporting the analytics solutions that the DP-600 is focused on. So if you want to pass it, you will actually need to understand how to do some of the management, and then also some of the practicalities as well. So SQL, Spark, KQL, you need to learn how to know. You don't need to be expert in all 3 languages, for example, but you need to have a really practical, good understanding of at least 2 of them, I think, and then at least a reading understanding of the 3rd. And typically, so I would say SQL and PySpark are probably more important, but KQL is still something you need to at least understand what has been written, and then understand what the output might be. But you probably get away with knowing 2 of them well, and 1 of them just in the cursory.
Yeah, because we can't know it all, right?
No, you can't know it all, and I think it's important to say that I don't know them all, and I think still it was a tough exam, but it was okay in a way. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And as you said, I think that this level 700 or DP-700 builds beautifully on top of DP-600, where DP-600 focuses more on the analytical part of Fabric, where this focuses on the engineering part. Not that you need both, but because it can be two different roles, two different persons in the organization, but you might get both. It's fine. I have both, and you have both, so that's good.
I think it's important to say that if you come from building business intelligence solutions, you might have a chance of both. But if you are coming from more for the business side of things, this one might be much more challenging than the DP-600.
Yes,
keep that in mind. But read all the documentation, and it's actually very good, well documented. So you shouldn't worry too much if you feel comfortable with what we're going to go through today, for example.
Yeah, I totally agree. So the next slide is actually perhaps just a recap of what you said, but here you go.
Yeah, and just illustrate that there is each part of the exam weighs the same. Now each one of these parts has lots of different subparts, but each one of these parts is actually is the same weight. So you don't it's not overly focused on the technical, but it's still something that you need to have all three basically to be able to pass this exam.
Yes. So if we dive a step deeper into that, then here is what we're actually going to talk about.
Yeah. So let's say each of these three sections has subsections, and what you see on the screens are also the headlines of the subsection. So each one of these headlines also has a subsection. So I would highly recommend that you go into the shortcut that is on the screen here, the aka.ms/DP-700 study guides. That is what will outline each in one of these headlines here and tell you exactly what you need. I will just go briefly through them so you have an understanding of it, but you should definitely go and take a look at the site. So when you talk about the implemented management, that's more of the how you set up the environment, how you make everything set up correctly so that you can actually work with and create a data platform within Fabric. So you will need to be able to set things correctly, have with the Fabric workspace settings, which we will come into a little bit later on. You will need to understand the life cycle management in Fabric, so connecting to Git and doing branches and stuff like that. You will also need to understand security. Of course, you should understand security and governance. So in this case, governance is more about what can be around it, such things like purview and stuff like that. You don't need to know purview to pass the exam. Just make sure that, but you need to be aware that things are out there. And then also about if you should how you should orchestrate your processes. Should you use Spark, or should you use pipelines, or what should you use? So that's what is included in the first part there. So how do we set everything up? How we need everything ready so that we can actually implement the solution we want. The middle part, so the second part, the ingest and transform data, that's where we typically see the actual technical development work. So how do you design the load patterns? How dimensional modeling? All these different things about making sure that you put your data through all the different stages of a solution. So if you call it bronze, silver, gold, or extract transform load, or whatever you call it, this is whatever that is. So you need to understand how you model your data, how you make sure these patterns are correct, and the medallion architecture is the concepts that they will probably use, but the actual concepts behind them are pretty similar, as we've always seen. Then it's about ingestion and transforming. That's typically what we're going to be talking about, Spark or SQL. So do you use SQL in the warehouse, or you use PySpark in a lakehouse? That is you're gonna need to know both, and you're gonna need to understand how they work, how SQL code works, how PySpark code works, and the development environment of each one of those, and all these things about creating a solution in both of them. Now, for me as a business intelligence professional that have been doing this for years, I think there's very little different. Yes, the language is different, but the actual implementation is not very different. So I think if you have created data warehouses for some time, or if you created lakehouses for some time, you can switch from one to the other, because the actual the concepts are very similar. This one will, of course, this exam will ask you about specific PySpark code or specific SQL code, so you're not gonna be able to get away with not knowing anything about the coding, but you will still need to you can still, with the concepts, are going to be familiar with one or the other.
Exactly.
And then of course you might also going to be ingesting or transforming streaming data, KQL. That is something you need to understand. If you want to build a data platform in the modern world, you probably have to touch something on our streaming data as well. So that's also something that is part of that middle section. You want to add something, Brian?
Yeah, I was just adding around the ingest and transform batching data, that a small hint where I actually had troubles doing the exam without giving out all the questions, then it might also be a good idea to look into the DAGs or DAGs or dynamic acyclic graphs inside PySpark, because that is actually a part of the questions around all the ingestion data.
Yeah. So you will need to understand how to set up a loading pattern and make sure everything works well as well. So that's so the first one is management. The second one is the actual implementation of the solution, and then the third one is the monitoring and optimizing. So you have your Fabric monitor dashboard or monitoring I don't know, console or whatever, where you click on the monitor and then you will see how things run. Did they fail? Did they pass? And you can go into the logs and you can go and see different things. You need to understand how they work. You need to understand where to find it, of course, and you need to understand the different item types and how to filter the lists and stuff like that. That is also very important, because there's no reason building a solution if you cannot make sure it works. Then you need to, of course, be able to identify and resolve errors, and that's both SQL errors, that's PySpark errors, and that's streaming errors. And you need to be able to use the monitor to actually find what is going on, and then use the logs to actually figure out what went wrong. Now, that's not to say that you need to be able to read the Livy log of a PySpark, and you need to understand every single thing that's happening there. But you need to understand where to look, and then at least some simple errors. You need to understand how would you react to those, and how would you want to work with that. And then lastly, optimize performance. That's more about how do we make things run fast or faster. And there are some built-in things, including in the monitor, which will help you, figure out, how things are going. There's also built-in things that will make things run faster for you, without you needing to do anything. But you will need to understand what makes things go faster, both in a SQL query and also in a PySpark query in the KQL. You need to understand what is going on there, and what makes things go slow, what makes things go fast, and then be able to understand where to find the solution for that. You're not going to be sorry.
Perhaps the optimized performance part is perhaps the wild card, because that can be anything, right?
Yes.
That could be pipelines, notebooks, PySpark, SQL, KQL, whatever coding things we have. So
yeah. So I think the main thing here is to be able to figure out where do I find out if something is going slowly, and over time as well. So figure that out, and then also you understand that a particular SQL query, it might be running slow, but there is how would you react to that, and how would you optimize that, or a PySpark query. So I think these are the things that you need to be, have a little bit of understanding about it. Not maybe expert understanding, but at least some experience on that.
Yeah, indeed. So speaking of certifications, the next up here is actually the DP-203 and the DP-700, a comparison chart here. What we would like to empathize is that if you have the DP-203 today, then that will actually retire as of March 31. So 1st of April, DP-203 is no longer valid. Even though you have it, you still have it until it expires 12 months later. But you have to transition to the DP-203 at some point.
I think the important thing here is that if you're considering taking a certification, I don't think you should be focusing on the DP-203. Even though you can still do it for the next couple of months, or at least the next couple of months, you'll be able to do that. You probably would better be off, focusing on the DP-700 instead. Although they are two different things, and I think if you want to take the DP-203, it's of course really good to understand those technologies. They are not going away. But if you are considering now which one to take, the DP-700 is probably the right path, and that's probably why you're here.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so. Sorry, perfect. Sorry for that. Next up is a general introduction to Microsoft Fabric. What is it and how do we get started with it? So let's dive into the content. We're going to start with a bit of level setting to everyone to listen in. If this is a review for you, please feel free to add your own thoughts and experience with Fabric in the comments or to the moderators. They will happily help you understand deeper on what you're talking about. In this section, we will talk about what is Fabric and why is it so important, an overview of the Fabric components, so OneLake, Data Factory, and so forth and so forth, and also try to focus on what makes Fabric unique from other platforms without a direct comparison. But first of all, in Fabric, you get now these 6 pillars. A few months back, these 6 pillars would have looked different, but as of Microsoft Ignite, these were changed, and now we have Data Factory, data engineering, warehousing, data science, real-time intelligence, and Power BI. Power BI has always been a part of Fabric and will always be, I guess. But Data Factory is your way to data integrate, combining both Power Query and Data Factory to move and transform all your data. It's more or less just the pipelines where you can orchestrate and do stuff, and then the Power Queries, the data flow Gen 2 with the Power BI lookalike Power Query functionalities is your UI way of doing data ingestion. If you want to go big scale, then the data engineering part of Fabric is with a full-blown Spark platform, and we both now have PySpark and Spark notebooks, and we can do. I tend to call it big data, but no one knows what big data is, so let's just call it large-scale data transformation. With that, we have the data warehouse to store all the data, which can also be a lakehouse. Though the data warehouse gives you the more of a SQL lookalike database, something, which we also got the native SQL database underneath the hoods in Fabric at Ignite. So now we have 3 options, actually 4, to store our data in Fabric. Data science, out-of-the-box machine learning, with Spark, model learning, training, execution tracking, and we also have MLflow to have all the governance around your machine learning models. Real-time intelligence, a suite within the suite. We have everything inside real-time intelligence. We can process data, store it, analyze it, make actions on top of it with the activator options. So we can now begin to do stuff with our data, listen to it actively without people actually looking at it. Last but not least, the well-known, hopefully, Power BI, the UI, the top of the ice cake, where you can begin to analyze all your data from especially also the direct lake connection. But we also have something underneath the hood, and this is where Askia says, "Hey, hold on, because we have OneLake. Can I just access every OneLake data from every service?"
Yes, that's the idea. That's what we want. We really want it to be one to all. Yeah, there are maybe not 100% synced all the time, but yes, we can. That's lovely.
Exactly. So OneLake is, I think, the unique selling point at the beginning was the OneDrive for your data, where every service stores data in OneLake by default, with one exception. Real-time intelligence doesn't by default store data in OneLake. You need to enable that, but that's just a tick mark, and then you're good to go. It's a unified product with one place to store your data and share data, so you don't have to copy it. Security and governance, this is where Askia comes to play. Compute and storage, and the business model. The business model is perhaps what I like to call data products or the semantic models, where we begin to put data in a model that can be consumed by end users.
Yeah, I think what is amazing about Fabric, what I think what's caught my eye is that you create a workspace and you're ready to go. There's you don't need to provision anything. You don't need to go out and get things created. Create a workspace. If you have permission, you create a workspace and you're ready to go with all of this. There's no exception for that, which is good and bad. But it's really good if you want to create stuff. It's maybe a little bit less good if you're governance responsible.
Yes, indeed. And it just works with a few clicks of the mouse, then you're good to go, and then you're up and running. I think there is a thing on this slide. Yeah, I said it. Single copy of your data from OneLake. So sorry, I was ahead of the slides here. So I think you got the idea here. One thing we also have to mention is Copilot all over the place. If you have an F64 or above in the capacity size, then you also get Copilot inside Fabric in various versions across all the services. Some are more extensive and elaborate than others. Some are content aware and chat aware, so they remember what you talked about. Some of them are still in the making of being on that level.
I think as a minimum, they are at least code helpers.
At least.
The minimum, but they're always involved in getting better and better, each one of them.
Exactly. But Askia, where does Purview fit in all of this?
It fits all around. It is basically the one that you can if you want to have use Purview, it will help you keep control over the data you have and the lineage between all these different things that you. So typically you're going to be moving data from A to B to C to D, and keeping control over that is something that Purview can do. Plus a million other things such as security and data loss prevention and all kind of things that will allow you to make govern your estates much more easier. But unfortunately, it is not a part of this exam. But I think it's actually it's good to mention it at least, that it is something that can help you.
Yeah, exactly. And perhaps Purview is a completely different topic for a completely different day. We can talk months and months about Purview. So let's fast forward to OneLake. As we said, every service inside Fabric stores data in OneLake. It's built on top of as a data lake storage Gen 2 with a beautiful UI on top. And what you also get is if you have a storage account outside of Fabric, you can just connect that to Fabric, and then you can do all your shortcuts and your OneLake readables as you could, and your data lake readables as you could out of OneLake. So there's nothing magical about OneLake other than it is a data lake Gen 2 with a beautiful UI on top of it. No matter what you do, data is stored in a Delta Parquet format. I know that you can store it in other formats. We'll get back to that in just a minute. And every workspace, when I create a workspace, I get my own small box in OneLake, so other people outside of that workspace can't access it unless I am quite explicit in giving them access, either by the workspace level or on a specific folder level or file level or whatever level I need. We recently got folder level access, I guess, in public preview.
What I think is beautiful about OneLake is that it abstracts all that complexity of creating a data lake and creating containers and creating folders and understanding giving the access rights on them. Yes, that gives us great configurability. That's lovely, but if you just want to abstract that away, it's so nice that you just create a workspace. You have something. You don't need to understand why. You don't need to understand what it is. It's just a storage where you can put your things in. No matter what type of file it is, you just put it in there, and it will just work. And I think that's something that is great, for most organizations.
Yeah, and Microsoft also makes a good effort in opening up the OneLake for other third-party applications like Databricks or Snowflake or whatever you have. And we just got, was that at Ignite? We got the open mirroring part, where if you don't have a standardized connection built by Microsoft, you can just build it yourself with the open mirroring feature. That is quite amazing. So let's move on. We have a lot of things to do here. So as we perhaps mentioned, then no matter where you are in the data world, you can bring in data from wherever that is in multiple ways. Shortcuts is perhaps your first go-to thing, because if data is stored in either a storage account or in OneLake or other places, most of them are now enabled to be added as a shortcut. And a shortcut is just what it says. It is a pointer to the data, so it reads the data when you need it as a shortcut. and it only moves the data that you need. It only reads the data that you need. It doesn't move data. The shortcuts are also broadly used outside of Fabric. For now, you can also connect to Amazon S3 buckets, to Microsoft Database, and other sources. We also have mirroring. Mirroring is actually what it says, a mirror of the data. So whatever happens in your sources, this could be Azure Cosmos DB, Azure SQL DB, MongoDB, and so forth and so forth. What happens there is actually being reflected in OneLake. So, and it is with both good and bad, because if you get an insert in your database, then that insert is also reflected in OneLake. But if you get a delete in that database, that delete is also reflected in OneLake. So it's not a full load of data. So because if data is getting deleted in the source, it's also getting deleted in OneLake. So you have to choose how to implement your data integration. That might also be a small hint for the certification questions.
Yeah, I think it's important to understand that the mirroring is not ETL.
No, it's not.
It is what it says. It's mirroring.
It is a mirror, exactly. It's just a copy of what's happening on the other side of the bridge. Yes, and of course, Google can also be used. I forgot to mention that. And if you have other Azure sources, Microsoft is building more Azure sources to be enabled here. But right now, we have a quite extensive palette of sources to be enabled for the mirroring part, at least.
Brian, there's a question from the.
There's a question.
Which I cannot answer. So I'm not sure if you can answer it. So the question is, how do you balance performance and security when deciding between querying pre-computed predictions stored in OneLake and calling live Azure ML endpoints for real-time inference in Power BI?
Oh wow!
I'm gonna say I have no idea, because this is not my area of expertise. Do we have a session on ML in this series that we can?
Yeah. There is an AI ML series session coming up, so I would highly encourage you to answer that question here. It is an amazing question. I would love if I could answer that. I'm sorry, but I can't. And I think there's a third option where you can put all your machine learning in a. There's a fourth option that you can put all your machine learning data in a SQL database with a vector-enabled database, and you can also put it in real-time intelligence. So I think we need some data scientists on board to answer that question. I'm just a data guy, and I know Askia is perhaps.
Yeah. Even though I'm happy to say that I do governance, so I'm I have an understanding about security and some understanding about doing some of these governance stuff. The ML part is not something that I have done a lot of, so I am absolutely sorry about that.
But I would highly encourage you to save that question and ask it in the AI/machine learning part of these live sessions. So Askia.
Yes.
Understand and manage the Fabric environment.
Yes. Let's hop in it. So when you think about Fabric, and of course, if you have been around Power BI, some of these things will be very, very familiar with you. But I think it's really good that we set some kind of expectation, because these are the things that you really need to understand when it comes to the management, section of the exam. So we have several layers that we have in here. We have a tenant, which is basically typically organizational-wide. Now, there's no such thing that, there's nothing to say that an organization cannot have more than one tenant, but typically they will have, they will of course have at least one, but let's just assume they have one. So it's a hierarchy of things. So you have a tenant, you have an organization that has a tenant. That tenant will have one or more capacities. So capacities are a compute that you can buy. And those capacities, like say you can have one or more of them, and it depends on what you want, it depends on what you're trying to achieve. So there's no, you're not restricted there. Within a capacity, you can have, domains. And domains are optional. You don't have to use them. You can use them if you want. And they're typically used to either split things up into some kind of domains, such as like sales or marketing or something like that. Or you can use them for whatever you want because they're basically tags. I have a customer that uses them for development, testing, and production. So they split the workspaces like that. So there's all kind of different ways you can do it. But domains are basically tags that you can set where you can have workspaces that are belong to a domain. So it's more easy to separate things from one another. And you can also have domain can also you can control some security and some settings on a domain level as well, which will be inherited by all the workspaces underneath it. A domain can also have a subdomain, so one or more subdomains. And then if you need more granular ways to split things up, you can then use subdomains for that. And then you have the main part, which is a workspace, and a workspace will always belong to a capacity in a Fabric environment. So workspace doesn't have to belong to that in the Power BI, but in a Fabric it does have to belong to a capacity. And that workspace can also be a part of one subdomain or one domain. So never more than one. So you cannot have one workspace in more than one domains, and you cannot have workspace belonging to more than one capacity. It will always be one-to-one. And then within each workspace, you will have items. So items like a Lakehouse item, or a warehouse item, or a KQL database, or a Power BI report, or a semantic model. All these different things, they can belong to a workspace. So if you look at the image on the right, you will see that there we have one tenant, which is the light blue, and then the lightest blue in between there, or the light gray, whatever you call it, that is a capacity. And then within the capacity, you have workspaces. And then if we would zoom in further, we would see that within each workspace, there will be things in them such as reports or in our case, because we're talking engineering, it's probably going to be a pipeline or a notebook or a lakehouse or something like that. So these are the hierarchical structure of all the items that we have, or the things that we have. Now we also do have folders within a workspace, but they are not really. They are basically just a virtual thing that will allow you to organize your items within a workspace. They're not really a physical thing, so that's why they're not really mentioned here.
Yes, so, and folders can also have folders, so we can build a tree structure of items going on within that workspace. Speaking of workspaces, I think the next slide also focuses in on workspaces.
Yes. So and like say if you're from if you know a Power BI, this will be a familiar concept. But so what are workspaces? They are a centralized place to organize your data engineering items. So you have a workspace, you can put things in it, and it will allow you to to more than one person to work on the same things. So facilitate collaboration. That's what you have workspace for. That's why they were created, basically for Power BI at that time. You put things in them, and then you can give other people access and allow you to work more than one person on it at a time. Now, just to be clear, some items are more easier to work with, for more than one person at the same time. Well, most of them are not. So even though they facilitate collaboration, that doesn't mean that necessarily that you can have 5 people editing the same pipeline at the same time. But you can, you can work on it, individually, and you need to understand how that works. Most important thing about workspace, what it does is managing security. So and we will come a little bit back to this, but in Fabric, if you want to give anyone any kind of edit access, right, that is on a workspace level. So that's why you need to be very conscious about how you organize your workspaces. You have one or more workspaces, and how you make those work. You need to understand that really well, what kind of workspace strategy you want to go with, because that's very, very important when it comes to security, how you set up your workspaces. You can also think of it as an environment management. So basically, your workspace is an environment. It has a bunch of different settings on it, and it also, you can also set, as the lifecycle management environment. So it can be a dev environment or a test environment, but it also is an environment in itself because it has a loads of different settings. So you can have different settings from one workspace to another. And again, lifecycle management workspace is very central there. If you think about Git integration in Fabric, workspace is the granularity you get it at. So one workspace you can put that into Git, but it has to be all the workspace, everything in it. So there's no way to put part of a workspace into Git integration. And when you do branching, it will always be the whole workspace you branch, not just part of it. So that's the granularity you have. And will also dictate a little bit of what kind of a lifecycle management, what kind of workspace management strategy you set, is what kind of lifecycle management you want to set up. There are some performance optimization you can do on workspace level, but very little, and I don't think that is really overly important in this case here. And then the workspace, of course, integrates with OneLake. Yes, for all science and purposes, as a developer, you don't need to think about it really, but it is, a workspace will always be basically like a container in Azure Data Lake Gen 2, but that's abstracted from you. You don't need to think about it. It's just there and it will work, which is really great.
Indeed. The next couple of slides, just for the audience here, we have perhaps 20 slides left, and we have 18 minutes, so we will speed things up just a tiny bit to get all things done here. Askia, did you have a live demo of the workspace we could show?
Yes.
Perfect. Then I can skip a few slides here. While Askia is clicking, the next couple of slides should be a walkthrough of the workspace, but we will actually do that on a live workspace as we go along.
Yes. So let me go and share my screen here. Tell me when you can see it. There it is. So we have. I just want to show you a couple of things about So I have just a workspace in Fabric here, and I just want to show you a couple of things about workspace, how they work and what they are. So first of all, you will have all your items down in the bottom part here. So this middle part here is not something that we it is a task flow that you can, if you want to build, but you can also just hide it if you don't want to see it. I have built a beautiful task flow here, so I'm going to have it open. But you have all these different items in here. In here, I have a lake house, I have a notebook, and I have a pipeline, and all these different things. So this is where the items are. You will continue to create new items. They will be put into the workspace.
Askia, can I interrupt just quite quick? If you could zoom just a bit, Control plus something, because it's quite tiny. One more. There you go. Thank you so much.
Yes. So for you to also understand, there is also some up here. This is the name of the workspace up in the top left-hand corner, and there are some icons there that will tell you some things about the workspace. So the first one will tell you that this is a Fabric trial workspace. The diamond, if you come from a Power BI world, you will understand that diamond means that this is a capacity behind this, and this is a Fabric capacity. You cannot do any data engineering without a capacity, so that shouldn't be a surprise that it is that. And then you will have this circle icon here means that this is a part of a domain as well. So this workspace is a part of a domain called Volume 1. And if this is here, you can see what the domain is, and then it's also part of a deployment pipeline called production. So these icons up on the top, they will tell you lots of different things about this particular workspace, which can be really, really useful. Then on the on the right hand side, you will see different buttons that you will probably recognize if you have worked with Power BI. First of all, you have the access where you can manage the access. So in Fabric, you will have, as in Power BI, you have 4 different access levels. You have admin, member, contributor, and a viewer. And everything but a viewer is a write access, and that's the only way you can actually do write access that's giving access to the workspace. So there's no way to give a person ability to edit a notebook without giving them contributor access, at least to the workspace itself. So keep that in mind, that how to do that. And then you have workspace settings, which is a settings that you have on your workspace, and there are a bunch of different ones here, and some of them are more important than the others, but I think it's worth taking a little bit of a look. So first of all, you have some of the general stuff. One of them is the domain, so you can have whatever domain you want to have on this workspace. You need to create the domains beforehand, so then you can pick them out here. And so I have 3 different domains here that I can pick from, and this will group the workspaces together in a domain. If I hop a little bit in this here, you have different things that you can go in here. One of the main ones is Git integration. So here you can connect your workspace to either a Azure DevOps repo or to a GitHub repo. So you can use those two technologies. You need to have an account, you need to have access, you need to have created those beforehand, and then you can connect your workspace to it, meaning that now this is connected to, this is a demo, so this is connected to the main branch, probably shouldn't, and then you can have source control over everything that is in here. You will see the synced icons, the green ones here tell you this is actually synced to source control. You have OneLake settings here. There's not a lot you can do here, except which can be really useful. You can enable cache for shortcuts. So if you have a shortcut from Amazon S3 bucket, so instead of reading the data regularly or all the time, it can also cache it, so you have like a local copy of it. It does defeat the purpose a little bit of a shortcut, but it does speed things up a little bit. If you're reading the shortcut regularly, this can actually be a really useful one. So it will sometimes read from the cache. Workspace identity is also a really important new thing. So if you have if you're used to using service principals in Azure, this is a similar concept. So basically, this is a identity for the workspace that will allow you to do different things. At the moment, main thing it can do is that it can connect to Azure Data Lake Gen 2 in Azure without using a username and password or a SaaS key, which is this is more secure way of doing that. But hopefully in the future, this will be able to do much more, because using service principals or using identities is a better, secure way to do things instead of using named users, because named users they stop and change passwords and all these different things. And then you have a couple of things about network security that you can set here. You can create managed private endpoints, which is something that you might want to do if you have a managed private network in Azure and you want to combine Fabric with those. And then in the bottom part here, you will have settings for a few of the workloads that you have, and probably one of the main ones that you are going to be interested in if you want to do anything of kind of data engineering is the data engineering and data science settings, which is where you will find the Spark settings. And here you can go and set what is my default pool for the workspace. Default pools are really important. They will make things go fast and really nice to nice development experience. But you can also set up custom environments. You can set up concurrency and all kind of different things, and customize the size of the nodes and so different things like that. So this is the part where you want to head to if you want to do anything about the Spark settings. You can override most of them in notebooks, but this is the default part where you can set the things right. Yeah. So this is Workspace, fast way of running through workspaces and what they can do. So hopefully you get the gist there. So I think you should take over, Brian, and show me the slides again.
Perfect, thank you. That was the workspace, the fastest rundown I've ever seen of a workspace. That was great, thank you. And as you also talked about, we have CI/CD in Fabric. We have Git integration with both GitHub and DevOps. We have deployment pipelines, which you might know from Power BI. And we also have if you want to do everything yourself in PowerShell.net or wherever you are, all the Fabric REST APIs, which can do the same thing.
Yeah. So basically, you have for CI/CD, you have two components. You have the storage where you put all the source control, and then you have the actual deployment of it, where you can use deployment pipelines, or you can build your own pipelines in DevOps or GitHub Actions, using the REST APIs. And it depends on what kind of way you want to do it. And of course the new kid on the block as well, if you want to do the whole go between the environments.
Yeah, the Terraform, that's currently in preview, but it's quite amazing actually. So perfect. That was more or less that rundown. Now we are going to talk about ingest and store data in Fabric. We have a lot to cover here, and as Microsoft does this, I gotten a lot of questions. Why do I have all these options? Well, it's just a possibility. You don't have to use them all, but it is your choice on how you want to architect your platform. We have data flows Gen 2. We have pipelines, notebooks, shortcuts. We covered shortcuts and mirroring. Event stream is for streaming data live into Fabric in different ways, and we can also, of course, direct uploads. Yeah, sorry, I was just sorry.
Yeah.
So what to choose when? Well, you have to consider what's the data volume, what kind of data types do we have? Is it immutable data? Perhaps we don't need to update it. Then we save it somewhere else. What's the frequency? Is it always streaming? Then you might use the event stream. Is it bulk loading? Then you might use some notebooks. Is it going on all the way like an OLTP system? Then you might use the mirroring. What are the skills? This is perhaps the biggest hurdle. What are the skills inside the team who are going to use this, and also the organizational needs? What are the needs for the organization to do all of this, and the speed? That's perhaps also the need. What is the needed speed of these integrations? And complexity, of course. Do you need a complex data transformations? You have different options there, but also that will be slower if you don't do it right. So we are back to the performance issue about going on.
Yeah, in my opinion, ingestion is one-to-one, but transformation come afterwards. But that's a personal preference. Exactly. I think the skill set and the persona is really important there.
Yeah, exactly. Storage, we all use OneLake except EventHouse by default. So Lakehouse, Warehouse, and SQL Database uses the OneLake storage option, whereas in EventHouse you need to enable that because EventHouse is using a proprietary database format to speed things up even more. Stored in Lakehouse, you have now schema support in Lakehouse. Warehouse gives you row-level security, some other SQL options. The SQL database is perhaps the more lookalike SQL database. We don't have the SQL agent though, but we have all the other things that we need. And the EventHouse to store time series database.
I think it's important to say that everything that's stored in all of them, if you read a table into a Lakehouse or Warehouse or a SQL database, it's a Delta table. It's slightly maybe different flavor of it, but it's basically a Delta table.
Exactly. I was just told by the producers to skip a few slides, so I will skip 2 slides. Let's take this one. Tomorrow, we are going to talk about ingest and manage data in Fabric. And I would highly encourage you to watch that also, because we are a bit short of time here. Perhaps
that is where we will go a little bit more in depth into it. We have just told you what it is. Tomorrow they will actually tell you how to do it.
Exactly. So mark your calendars, as you see on this ticker in the bottom here. It's edition 2 tomorrow, same time, same bad time, same bad place. And again, FabCon is coming end of March. Please, if you have any possibilities to go there, please do so. It's an amazing event. Last but not least, 50% discount for the exam voucher. Fill out the form, and then you are, I don't know if you'll get a discount code or something, but you will get 50% discount off of this. With 6 minutes left, if we have perhaps a few questions from the audience, or else we can give you some hints on how to prepare for the exam while we wait for the questions. Because as you said, Asgeir, the exam preparation is not only reading the documentation. We also need hands-on practice, right?
Yeah, it's really important. I think, these kind of skills, because this is a bit of a tough exam. These kind of skills, it's really hard to get them just from books. So the more practical experience you have, the better. They don't have to be in a working environment. It can be also in doing the labs and making sure that you actually touched on the product. It's not enough just to read. But the study guides and resources on Learn are actually very good. So I think you should definitely go for them as well, even though you have hands-on experience, because they're going to be pointing you in the right direction regarding the actual exam.
Exactly. So while you were talking, we actually have a question from the audience. Entra is always the go-to for authentication management, or do alternatives exist? For instance, if a business has a multi-cloud solution, Google, Fabric, what's better? Do we have alternative?
So for Fabric, you have to use Entra. There is no other option you cannot log into Fabric without using Enter ID. It is basically because it's a part of a tenant, an Enter tenant. So you will always have to be logged in that way. So there's, you cannot really use anything else to log into Fabric, if that's the question here.
I hope that's the question, but we also need to note that we recently got the service principles, and that is I think it's being still worked on how the service principles in Fabric actually, what they can do and how they work.
Yeah. So you will, if the talking here is about logging into, so basically authenticating to data sources, that's a different scenario here, where you typically want to use some kind of identity on, if it's a workspace identity, a service principal, or some other identity in another cloud. That's fine, as long as it's not a named user. That's ideally we would not want to do that, because
Exactly.
like I say, they change password, they leave the company, and all those different things.
Yes, exactly. Last question: if the data is in a different tenant and Fabric is in a different tenant, will the data copy, so the data from Gen 2, work using a gateway? Is it possible to copy the data into OneLake?
Yes,
Yes,
it is definitely. So you can do it, via gateway. That is definitely doable. If the data is in OneLake on one side, or if in Azure Data Lake Gen 2 on the other side. So it's two different tenants, but it depends on what you mean about tenants. But if it's in Azure on one side and another tenant in Fabric, you can use the workspace identity, for example, or you can use a SAS key or whatever. If it's in a database or whatever, if it's in another Fabric environment, and so two Fabric environments, you can use gateway to go between them. So that's definitely doable to copy them. Ideally, you don't want to copy data too much, but you can definitely do it.
Yes. And I think that concludes our time for today. We will have to say a huge thank you for your time. 60 minutes. That was amazing. I hope you had a lot of fun.
Yes. Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye, everyone. Take care and have fun, and see you tomorrow, perhaps.